I'll start. I would say that the early years of marriage were very self-centered. We were raising 3 little boys, and we lived in. I was a stay-at-home mom, so we had moved so that I could stay home with the kids. And once I got into that role, life started to become all about the children all the time. I was in volunteer activities. I was making sure that I was, working with them, doing things with them. Didn't so much worry what was going on with my marriage and how Todd and I were doing necessarily once the kids came along.
For me, I got engulfed in work. It was pretty much everyday thing that's where I got my information from. I mean, being at home with the kids was good to help Julie out, but at the same time, I looked at it as more of a chore for me to just help her out and sort of get the kids to the age where I thought I'd enjoy them more, which was the teen years when they could play ball with me and things like that.
He used to talk about how he wanted the kids to grow up fast, and it would break my heart every time I would hear that, because the babies, I don't want to rush through these years. So I was trying to focus on being involved.
And the same thing. I mean, when we got married, I mean, we pretty much left God at the altar. We sort of, and to use the analogy of the hot and cold, and like the secular society being one, and then the God and faith society being the other, and we sort of turned God completely off after marriage. We pretty much said, okay, we're going to run the secular route. It seemed more comfortable, more natural. Our friends were doing it. That's the circle we hung out with. So that's where we and I think that's where a lot of our troubles began.
We were contracepting all that time, so even though we had the children, after I had the first one, the doctor would say, oh, do you want to go on the pill again, just so you don't get pregnant while you're nursing and that kind of stuff. So knowing what we know now, I didn't have to worry about it, but back in the day, that's just what you were led to believe was what you needed to do. So
and then moving on, we had our 3rd child pretty quickly. It was at that point we had a really difficult time in our marriage. We really were just thinking of ourselves and not of each other. And it became a real challenge, and we weren't sure if we were even going to go on. It was even at that point that we decided that our family was complete, and I had had a vasectomy because we figured we would not need any more children.
I insisted, which in hindsight is really heartbreaking, but at the time I thought, I've been on the pill, I've done all the work for so many years, it's your turn, it's your chance to really take over and make sure that we don't have any more kids. Because the boys, they were like 4, 2, and a newborn at the time, and I was in over my head.
All premature, so they all had special needs right off the bat. So we had it was a tough go of it.
Right.
So.
And it got dark. It got really dark. We both came from divorced families. We didn't want a divorce. We didn't want to put our children through what we lived through. So that was kind of that little bit of motivation. So I had picked up a book where they talked about, what if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? And that really changed everything for me. And Todd is not a reader, but he read that book, which that right there was divine intervention to get him to sit down and read a whole book. And all of a sudden I said, maybe that institution that we were so insistent that we at least get married in that institution, maybe they could help us. Maybe we should start going back to church. And that book kind of spurred that drive.
Yeah, I think that whole concept really was just earth-shattering to me to understand that, it's not all about my happiness. There's more important things than just my own happiness, my own selfishness. So it sort of let me turn myself on to actually understanding what I needed to do to make our marriage better. And when that sort of tilted the scales and made us look at other options, because like I said, when you go with the circle of friends we hung out with in society today, it was like, well, your best option is get divorced. Let's end this, let's move on.
That's the easiest thing to do. That is just
It would have been easy, but
so to speak.
Right.
We know it's not.
And I think what actually eventually turned us onto NFP, and I think would have been the theology of the body talk, because that was what
we found a church, and within 2 months we were exposed to theology of the body, NFP. Life completely changed. Like the scales fell away from my eyes, and all of a sudden I'm like, where was all this information? Why didn't I hear about this sooner? And thank God I have now. Said within 2 months we learned about theology, but I signed us up for NFP. Todd was there.
I was there.
He attended the classes. I don't know how much
I knew that NFP was a central component to theology of the body, to really understand the relationship and the language that our bodies speak to each other, and to really try and crystallize that. It made sense to go through the exercises of it. I really didn't understand the purpose of it at first, because it was really over my head. So, I sort of went through the motions of it at first, but the value of it really didn't sink in initially for me until we actually converted completely back to the church and we actually understood what it really meant to each other. And it was at that point we realized what we had done with the vasectomy and how that had really separated our relationship. And the gift that God gave me to give children, I had basically said, God, you can have that one back. And that really tore us apart.
For years. I mean, we wanted to have the reversal, but it's expensive.
Very expensive. $10 to have a vasectomy,
right,
or thousands of dollars to have a reversal.
Right. And so I was researching all these options and looking for help everywhere I could, but what I kept coming back to is we have to do this. We have to save up the money and do this. So we embarked on a little financial plan to get our finances in order so that we could save up the money to afford this. And it took 3 years. 3 years, lots of tears. Lots of sad moments. Every time a girlfriend would get pregnant, there was that painful realization that can't be us. We practiced NFP faithfully during those years, though, because I had never done anything to change my fertility. All the signs were right there. So we were learning about my body and how to respect the gift that God gave us through my body's signs, and then practicing faithfully. So that the day that we could get that reversal, we'd be ready to go. We'd be ready to hit the ground running. So
and it finally came.
2 months ago.
2 months ago, we finally got.
We're full. Yeah, we're full.
Back to restored. Our fertility's back to restored. So now it's a matter of, if God decides to bless us with another child, then so be it.
We're ready.
But, it's an important message, because I think a lot of people want to go through we can't do NFP. That's too long of a period of time to not be with their spouse and stuff. And I always look at it the analogy of, overindulgence is never a good thing. And NFP, for nothing else, teaches the discipline of keeping everything in perspective and taking, small pieces of what is a beautiful thing, as opposed to just having it whenever you want, essentially using each other, which is what we were doing.
That message of not being used, of not having to feel anymore that I am just an object that was available at any time. It meant a lot to know, even when he didn't understand NFP, that he was going to live the NFP lifestyle. And then slowly but surely, God had put it on my heart that I'd like to teach.
It started to click. Literally, I'd start doing some charting, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. And when that's a big deal, because when you're learning something that's totally like a foreign language, it's a challenge to really think, how could I ever teach this? But when it started to make sense to me, and the online teaching was really easy, we went through it so quickly. And we also wanted to pass it on. We're big on passing on. We knew what we went through in our marriage. We do that with the Retrofied Marriage Ministry, is try and pass it on to hurting couples. And with NFP, it's the same thing. And in our diocese, there's not a lot. We've got 3 teaching couples in our diocese, and we don't even have it mandated yet at our parish, but that's what we're striving for. And we knew, for us to go to Father and say we'd like to launch this as a mandate, we need to have teaching couples. So he's going to look at it and say, okay, who's going to teach it? And we couldn't possibly say, well, let somebody else do
go
it.
find someone now.
So we took that on as our own responsibility, and we're now available to start teaching. And we did teach one class already, and we've got another one in process.
The thing, unshared pain is wasted pain, is one of the things that we've learned in our lifetime. And so that pain of the vasectomy, waiting on that reversal, and just being able to share with other people that marriage is not easy. It's work. It's work. But if you will use tools, especially NFP, God can do wonders.
And our circle of friends has come completely turned around now, because we have the 10 couples that were in our marriage ministry, and all of them practice NFP as well. And
you're not alone. You're not alone.